All right, everybody, buckle up because we are diving into some seriously wild territory today. We're talking about silent weapons for quiet wars.
Yeah, this one is legendary.
Totally. This document is like the holy grail of conspiracy theories. People whisper about it in hushed tones, claiming it's a blueprint for global domination. But
Before we get accused of starting a panic, let's be clear.
we are here to analyze, not endorse. Think of us as your conspiracy theory tour guides. We'll walk you through the good, the bad, and the just plain bizarre.
And trust me, this document has all three in spades.
Okay, so what exactly is silent weapons for quiet wars?
Well, it claims to be this secret manual, supposedly discovered back in the 70s, that outlines a system for total social and economic control.
Yeah, and it's written in this really strange, almost technical language, like they're trying to make economics sound like, I don't know, rocket science or something.
Right. Like they're trying to give it this air of scientific authority, when in reality, a lot of it is, well, let's just say it's highly debatable.
To put it mildly. But even if we take it with a grain of salt, it's still a fascinating read. It gets you thinking about power dynamics in a whole new light.
Exactly. It's like a twisted game of chess where the pawns are everyday people and the players are, well, let's just say they're not looking out for our best interests.
Okay, so let's get into the meat of it. What are these so-called silent weapons? Give us the rundown.
Well, the document argues that traditional weapons, guns and bombs, they're too messy, too obvious.
Right, nobody wants to start a war and completely trash the place,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly. They need a functioning system to exploit. So instead, they propose using silent weapons, things that operate on information, not bullets.
Information as a weapon, that sounds awfully abstract.
It is, but think about it. They're talking about manipulating economic systems, controlling the flow of information, even using things like advertising and propaganda to shape public perception.
So, like, instead of blowing up a factory, they crash the stock market and put the factory out of business that way.
Precisely. And because it's all done through these indirect means, it's much harder to trace, much harder to fight back against.
Sneaky. But they don't just want to destroy the system, right? They want to control it. How do they propose doing that?
That's where it gets really interesting. They talk about this concept of energy, but not energy in the traditional sense.
Not like solar panels and windmills.
No, they're using it as a metaphor for economics. They argue that just like energy flows through a circuit, wealth flows through a society. Understand those currents, and you can manipulate them to your advantage.
So it's like hacking the economic circuit board. Find the right nodes to manipulate, and you can control the whole system.
You got it. They break down industries into three main categories: capital, goods, and services. But it's the services bit they seem oddly fixated on.
Services! Like we're all doomed because of too many dog walkers and food delivery apps. I knew it.
No, not quite. Although, those are services. They're talking about how reliance on services, especially government-provided ones, makes a population more dependent and therefore easier to control.
Okay, so the more people depend on the system, the less likely they are to rock the boat, even if that boat is, sinking.
Exactly. It's all about creating a population that's compliant, dependent, and ultimately controllable.
But how do you actually control a whole society, even if they are pretty dependent on the system? Like, what's the next step in their little plan?
Well, they talk about this thing called economic shock testing.
Economic shock testing. That sounds intense. Like, are they going to crash the economy just to see what happens?
It's not that far off, actually. Imagine they want to see how strong a bridge is, right?
Okay.
So they, drive a bunch of trucks over it heavier and heavier until something breaks. That's economic shock testing, but with, well, the economy,
So they're basically using real people as their guinea pigs.
pretty much. The document suggests manipulating things like, say, the price of gasoline or interest rates.
No, so like what's going on right now?
Exactly. They create these mini crises, these economic shocks, and then they study how people react.
Okay, I'm starting to see where this is going.
Do people panic? Do they change their spending habits? Do they start hoarding toilet paper?
Wait, so they want us to hoard toilet paper?
No, that's just an example. The point is, by studying how we react to these shocks, they can figure out how to manipulate us more effectively in the future.
It's like they're playing SimCity with real people's lives.
That's a disturbingly accurate analogy. But here's the really creepy part.
It gets creepier.
Oh, yeah. They go on to list all the types of information they consider valuable for this whole control scheme. We're talking buying habits, credit card transactions, even phone records.
Phone records. Seriously, what are they, the NSA?
Hey, the document was supposedly discovered around that time, but Yeah, they're talking about using this data to build psychological profiles of entire populations.
So, like, they know what we buy, where we go, who we talk to.
And more importantly, what makes us tick, what our fears are, our desires, our weaknesses.
Okay, that's straight up Black Mirror stuff right there. But why? What's the point of gathering all this information?
Remember those economic amplifiers we talked about earlier? That's where this all comes together. They're talking about using this mountain of data to create highly targeted propaganda, advertising, even fake news articles.
Wait, so they're going to control us with memes?
Well, maybe not memes specifically.
Mm-hmm.
But the point is, by understanding our psychological profiles, they can craft messages that are incredibly persuasive, incredibly effective at shaping public opinion and behavior.
So it's not just about controlling the economy anymore. It's about controlling our minds.
Exactly. It's about creating a society where people willingly do what they're told, even if they don't realize they're being manipulated.
This is getting seriously disturbing. But there's one part I still don't get. They talk about the importance of consent. Like, how can consent be a weapon?
Right. They call it the artificial womb.
The what?
The artificial womb. It's this idea that people are naturally drawn to comfort, to security, even if it means giving up some of their freedom.
So we're all just a bunch of babies who want to be swaddled and told what to do.
In a nutshell, yeah. They argue that people create governments, institutions, even social norms as a way to eliminate risk from their lives.
Which, okay, I get it, nobody likes uncertainty. But their solution is basically to create a system where everyone is so comfortable, so dependent on the powers that be, that they never even think to question anything.
Precisely. They call it the strategy of the saturated society. Surround people with enough distractions, enough entertainment, enough material possessions, and they'll never realize they're living in a gilded cage.
So we're all just stuck in this system like rats in a maze with no way out. That's pretty bleak, even for us.
Well, not necessarily. Remember, the document itself admits that their silent weapons only work on a docile and distracted public.
So they're basically saying, hey, sheeple, this only works if you keep blindly following along.
Exactly. Their power lies in our ignorance and apathy. So, step one is waking up and paying attention.
Easier said than done, right? I mean, this document is like a masterclass in manipulation.
Yeah.
How are we supposed to see through all the smoke and mirrors?
It can feel overwhelming, absolutely.
Yeah.
But just by having this conversation, by shining a light on these tactics, we're already a step ahead. Knowledge is power, as they say.
Okay, so knowledge is power, but where do we even start? Like, this document is practically a blueprint for a dystopian society, and it seems like we're already
Already living in it.
pretty much.
You know, it's funny because this document, as much as it lays out all these nefarious tactics, it also inadvertently reveals their biggest weakness.
Which is?
Us, people like you and me, critical thinkers, people who are willing to question the status quo and challenge the narrative.
So they're basically saying, hey, our plan for world domination is foolproof unless, people start thinking for themselves.
Exactly. So keep asking those uncomfortable questions. Keep digging for the truth. Don't take anything at face value.
It's like that saying, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not out to get you, or something like that.
Well, maybe not exactly. But the point is, don't be afraid to be a little skeptical, to question the motives of those in power, whether it's politicians, corporations, the media, anyone who stands to benefit from keeping us in the dark.
So basically, don't be a sheep. Be
a wolf in sheep's clothing.
No, be an informed, engaged citizen. Come on, man, this is serious.
Right, of course. But seriously, awareness is key. Once you start to see the patterns, the manipulation tactics, you can't unsee them.
It's like those optical illusions, right? Once you see the trick, your whole perspective shifts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So educate yourself, read critically, question everything.
And maybe invest in a good tinfoil hat, just in case.
You know, it's funny you should say that. No, I'm just kidding. But seriously, folks, thanks for joining us on this wild ride through the world of conspiracy theories and economic manipulation.
Yeah, this has been a heavy one. Big shout out to all our listeners who stuck with us through this deep dive into silent weapons for quiet wars. We hope you learned a thing or two, maybe even had a few laughs along the way.
Just remember, the future isn't something that just happens to us. It's something we create. So let's get out there and make some noise.
And by noise, we mean, peaceful protest and informed debate.
Of course, of course. But seriously, stay curious, stay informed, and most importantly, stay engaged.
Until next time.